Sancho to score. No mistakes this time.
That is a rocket.
Royce and another fantastic goal by Marco Royce. Haaland's volley is beautiful beyond compare.
Jetzt kommt das Wunder von Dortmund. Foulspiel von hinten an Götze.
Needs to lay it off. We're going to shot away. Oh, what a goal!
Welcome back to Dortmund Dispatch. Today I'm joined by Brian and Ali. Obviously, the Bologna match has already happened. We will be releasing that episode either Thursday or Friday, just because of our record dates didn't line up. But here's the show. To break down some of the drama going on behind the scenes at Borussia Dortmund, along with a 2-0 loss to Eintracht Frankfurt that absolutely everyone could have seen coming. So how are you guys doing outside of Borussia Dortmund? Because we've all been probably pretty stressed about whatever's happening, but is life going well outside of football?
Life's going well, yeah. First proper, well, I say proper, in retrospect, snow in New York in a very long time, so that was kind of cool. But yeah, all good on my end. What about you, Ali?
Oh, I'm blessed. It's too cold here. I'm about to do the Fahrenheit conversion, but it's way too cold here. It's for reference, negative 20 Celsius. So for you guys, that would be
Oh my God.
it would be -4 Fahrenheit. So take that in. That's what I'm sitting. That's why I'm not in a jersey, because I can't do that. I'd freeze. But other than
That's
that,
real winter.
oh man. Other than that, it's been a good weekend. Other than the game, I think it was on Friday. Life has been all right except for Dortmund. It's been rocky, but yeah.
It's been a ride.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway, let's talk about Dortmund. Yeah, 20 degrees Fahrenheit for me this morning, and I was not appreciating it. So -4, my goodness, I would not make it. Let's start with the 2-0 loss to Eintracht Frankfurt. A miserable, lackadaisical, inexcusable performance. Because obviously, in the build-ups of the game, Omar Marmoush gets sold, and very kind of Frankfurt to allow him to leave mid-season while his stock is at an absolute peak, because for reference, he was on a very, very good salary for an individual, a footballer even, moved to Manchester City and has guaranteed generational wealth for as long as him and his family live. But as a Borussia Dortmund fan, you're looking at that and you're like, this should be a win. And in normal years, it would be. Brian, can you tell me why this was not a normal year?
That's kind of been the big question, right? There's a long and large overarching answer to that I'm sure we'll get into. But I can tell you from the Frankfurt side, we faced what is a very cohesive counter-attacking team under Dino Topmuller. They have a style of playing that they have adopted under him that works for them, and they buy into his ideas. So I guess that does kind of answer your question. It's one team where they're buying into the coach's ideas. They're going ahead and they have a set plan. Meanwhile, we're going into a game where, kind of like what you mentioned, they just lost what was likely the biggest reason for their success this season, i.e., Omar Marmoush. And you have a Dortmund team that is going into this game and basically, doesn't really have any idea of what they're really doing. They're trying to put in, basically haphazard crosses into the box, trying in every single way possible to reach Girassi in that sense. And it's not working. And when it's not working, they're not changing anything to make anything else work. I think the first through balls that I, actually saw in this game from our side were basically through Julian Rierson when he was the first one to try that. And I mean, that's crazy to me. When your left back is trying that, when your full back is trying that, being the first to try that, that's insane. And then you had Brandt follow suit with a couple failed attempts in that sense too. But also,
I think to their credit, Brandt and Mecha both tried them early. I just think they were such poor attempts that they didn't even want to play them, and you could kind of see the regret in the ball as they were trying to play through the middle of the pitch, and like it was just so easy for Frankfurt to intercept them because they just weren't there.
I
I
mean,
mean,
maybe
not to say
they were
they
just
the ones they attempted weren't there. Sorry, I just want to clarify that. Like they
Well,
could have played them at some point, but
maybe
not the ones
maybe they were
should.
there, but they were clearly bad enough for me to not recognize them because the first genuine through ball that I saw was the Rierson one. So I mean, they were just that bad in my
First
opinion.
completed, we'll say.
There you go. We could put it that way. But yeah, I mean, and then you just kind of have a Frankfurt team that, once again, as I kind of already mentioned, is very good on the counterattack. Our defense is kind of, all over the place, can't really deal with that counterattack. Specifically, if we're going to go into detail, we could talk about the first goal, basically, where Rami Bensebaini doesn't even bother to cover the space, to cover the cross, with Frankfurt fullback coming in and putting that in Christensen, I believe it was. So I mean, what is there to really talk about there? You're basically talking about one team who was trying to win and one team that was not. In short,
Honestly, there's like very little for me to add. I feel like you summarized it really well. Um, that goal in particular, the first one. If I'm not mistaken, there was a like the pass was made right in front of Ben Sebaini and from the opposition fullback, and he already booked it. He was already gone, and Ben Sebaini like reacted so late, which obviously it puts you at a disadvantage, and it kind of shows you where the team is at in terms of intensity, which was my biggest issue. Everything just felt so flat, like you mentioned. Very little through ball action. The two tens in Gittins and Brandt weren't really able to do much because no one was really moving around them. There was no space being created. I know they did park the bus, so to speak, but we got to be able to, to play through that. And I think I texted the group in the game. I was like, man, shout out Rierson because he's the only one playing with heart up top. Like it was very sad to see. Just like I said, my biggest issue was the lack of intensity. Everything was just flat, side to side, backwards, and it was a hard watch. It was very difficult to watch. But yeah, I can't really add much more. I agree with everything you said.
Yeah, I just want to get into some of this in detail because we're talking about a system where you have two attacking midfielders. It's lopsided because you have Gittins hugging the left flank, and then at times Brandt, who is slow, that's why he's a 10, is playing as a 10 at times, but then at other times he has to come out as your right winger. Um, and then your two midfielders are Nemecha playing as a 6 and Gross playing, dropping in between the center backs despite the fact we're playing a three-back system. Sorry. That part of the rant will be saved for later. But basically, you have Mecha playing as the 6, and then occasionally Gross is as a midfielder. Occasionally he's as a center back, but occasionally he's also as a 10, which is like fine if you have like a cohesive system around it, and you have like a certain Emre Can who is a midfielder stepping into midfield at times and kind of accommodating that, or you have like a right wing back because you're playing a back five and you have a guy like Jan Koto who can help a bit more with ball progression because like Julian Ryerson can try and do it, but he has no track record of doing it at an above average level in the Bundesliga. He has a lot of qualities, but he's in this side just completely being misprofiled into a back five. Um, and you have Ben Sebaini as your other wing back, who's done a very good job creating this year. He's never really done that before in his career, and he's really stepped up in that regard. But he's not elite at it, especially for a side that's as ball dominant as Borussia Dortmund. And so you have how many guys did I just list playing out of position? You also have Emre Can playing in the middle of a back five, and he can't distribute. So he's essentially just like a placeholder to allow Eintracht Frankfurt to set up their press more efficiently. and reset once the ball gets put in the middle for Borussia Dortmund. So you have, let's see, one of your three center backs out of position. You have two midfielders or two fullbacks, both not true wing backs. You have Nemecha and Gross playing as midfielders, but in like a role that I would say is definitely not ideal for at least Pascal Gross. So that basically has us up to four players being misprofiled. Let's add Julian Brandt there as five. So we have 5 of 10 outfield players being played in roles that just don't make sense to them. And you really see that in the midfield because the guy you want, like we're playing a midfield too, essentially, with a back three, and you have one mobile midfielder, which is Felix Nemecha. So when Julian Brandt is wide, or he is at the 10, you essentially have a massive space you would like a mobile midfielder to run into. And the mobile midfielder, your number 8 in this situation, is a 33-year-old now, 34-year-old, however old he is, Pascal Gross, who was never mobile when he hasn't been mobile in his entire career. If you go back to when he was at like Ingolstadt, he was not a mobile midfielder. This is a guy that can cover a lot of different positions. He's very versatile. He can play an 8, he can play a 6, all that, whatever. But he's not mobile, and so you're kind of missing someone to attack the space, run into that space. And when you're playing against the back three, that's where the space is going to be. And you kept seeing Eintracht Frankfurt like pull their midfielders narrow, but there was no one like in between the lines. There was no one like really troubling them or making them work hard. So that's kind of where the system like never worked. This is also a new system for Borussia Dortmund, and it was especially troubling to me. And this is what I'd ask both of you: when you saw Gross return to the lineup and you saw us start like two true midfielders, did you think we were going to go back to that first system we played at the start of the season, and then we played for another like 3-ish match period later on in the season with that left winger as your true wide guy, and then your right winger kind of as that inside inverting forward? Did you think we were going to play something more along the lines of that when you saw this, with Brandt getting pushed out wide? Like, what did you think when you saw this lineup? And do you think I'm off place with some of my characterizations of players being played in roles that do not suit them?
You can feel free to go first on this one.
Thanks, man. So I feel like, well, first of all, in terms of characterization, I think it's good, because if guys are out of position, there's only so much you can expect in terms of a return on performance. You know what I mean? And was I expecting that same back 5, back 3 system? I would have if he started Jan Koto, right? But he didn't. He played Rierson. So I'm like, okay, it sounds like, some sort of back 4 situation. Maybe he's gonna, try to draw them out and play counter with, Gittins and Guirassy. But that wasn't the case. I felt like a lot of players were confused on what to do, because even when, I know I'm kind of jumping a little bit, but when the subs came on, right, nothing changed. So the instructions weren't any different. They were just told the exact same thing. And if it wasn't working for 70 minutes, I don't know why it would start working now. And that was a big issue with the system, because there's no adaptability. He makes panicking subs, and like it was hard to understand what was going to move forward. I would have loved to see a back 3 work, but you would have needed very mobile, a very mobile front 3, and your midfield would have been like required to make incisive passes. There it is, because that's what it requires. But that's not who we have in midfield, right? We don't have those type of players in midfield in Gross and Nemec. Nemec is not really that kind of guy, I feel like. And our wingbacks aren't wingbacks. So I don't understand why that system would work, even after he switched everything by taking off Mensah. But Brian, what do you think?
I think when you're in a situation like Dortmund are in now, I think it's the worst time possible to go about experimenting and going back to something that caused you trouble earlier in the season. And the back three is exactly that. And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure this has already been tried once before with Chan as one of the center backs, and that did not work because he was cut out for pace, just like he was here. He's not mobile enough to be a center back at this point, in my opinion. I think at best, if we're talking about Chan specifically, he can play in midfield at certain points, kind of as someone to come on to like see out a game. I don't see him unless you're kind of in a pinch where we've seen basically Dortmund in like in an injury situation, you need someone to play, then you play him there. I don't think it's smart to play him in a back three in that situation. And once again, we're in a situation where we're desperately in need of points, and this was not the time to be going back to experimentation and going about and doing that. So that's all I really have to say about that. I think Sahin should have learned by now that this experimentation stuff is risky, and we've already been burned by it more than once. I mean, the Stuttgart game is prime example of that. Literally starts with a back three, then switches, things get better, and then goes back to the back three, and then we get pummeled. So it's like, why all of a sudden did he think that a high flying Frankfurt team would be the good team to put that back in play against? I don't know. But then again, I don't understand a lot of the decisions going on right now, so it kind of just goes along with the trend.
He's also
small tinkers, like small changes, tinkering very minor things with your side. I think one, maybe two at a time, like that's one thing. But these are wholesale changes. Like these are we haven't even seen this hybrid 10 role really all season from a player like Bryant, who's supposed to be more creative. We've seen it from like your runners, like your Karim Adeyemi, your Maxi Bayer, and just doing this in like this way, it clearly didn't work. We don't have the profiles at wing back, which were also new roles. Schlotterbeck was playing as the left-sided center back earlier in the season. He was playing as a left back that kind of was also the third center back at most times. Similarly to how a lot of top teams play, where they have like a center back at fullback, and in most phases of play they're a center back. So like we've seen Shan before in that type of role, and it's just not worked. We've seen Sula, Anton, and Schlotterbeck do it. It's not worked. And again, wholesale changes, and like it's not working. Like I can't watch Emre Can try and be the guy setting the tempo at the middle of a back three. I can't do it.
I don't blame you.
I mean, you don't have a choice at this point.
I mean, I did do it. I was watching the game with my girlfriend, and she was not pleased to be around me in that situation, because I'm like, what am I watching? It just didn't make sense. And then even worse, we see a clear instruction from the coach to have Pascal Gross drop between the center backs. There's three of them. And he's dropping between the center backs, and I'm watching a shift into a back four with Ryerson and Bensebaini, two defensive-minded fullbacks, as wide midfielders.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm watching Getafe.
Oh.
Like, it makes less than no sense, and I genuinely couldn't understand it. And I haven't even talked about one of the worst parts, is that our most important player in build-up this whole season, it has been Nico Schlotterbeck. And when you're shifting your left-sided center back into a fullback role, you're essentially taking your best passer of the ball, your best long passer of the ball, one of your best dribbling center back, your best center back period. You're making him less effective if we turn the ball over, which we did on several occasions. And you're also making him less effective in the build-up, because if he needs to hit a cross-field ball to the right fullback, the ball's going to be in the air for 20 seconds, and whoever's their left wingback in this case, Nathaniel Brown, is very fast, and he's going to be able to cover whoever it is. So you can't even attempt the ball, and like taking him out of the build-up game. He had 8 progressive passes in this match, which is uh, marginally less than his average. But if you adjust for possession, we had the ball for like 8-10% more of the game, so you'd expect his passing numbers to be higher. So you can see that he's so much less involved in playing the important passes in the build-up, and he's a guy that can do that so much more efficiently than almost anyone else we have. It made no sense. Um, so like the tweaks and the specific coaching instructions you can see are just quite frankly like moronic to the same level. Like it, you have to be a little smarter, I think, to see that type of change compared to the third center back against Madrid change. But like I think it's stupid on the same level.
So the thing for me is like when you play a back three or a back five, whatever however you want to look at it, the typical practice is to either play some sort of high and wide winger situation. For example, if it's a 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3, whatever, right? Just so you can spread that back line as much as you can, and then you'll be able to have your midfielders and even fullbacks, if they're good with the ball, kind of step into midfield, find those passes, find those angles. But the thing is, our wingers did not do that, right? In an attempt to play high and wide, because Brandt is like you guys said, right? He's not that kind of player. And when we did play a back three, and we did have a front three to like respond to their 3 center backs, there was no action. Like I saw Brandt stand in between like 4 or 5 players, and Garassi just begging for the ball, and I'm like what is the image and in the coaching staff's mind of how we're going to score, right? Because you have to have some sort of image, like, all right, we're going to go wide, we're going to cross in, we're going to cut back, we're going to find these angles, but I can't even see it. And I've been very, I feel like, patient throughout the season, and it's kind of gotten to a point where, especially after the Holstein Kiel game, where I'm like, I don't understand what's happening here, because the experiments are coming at the wrong time. The players being subbed on are not getting told anything different, and I'm all for tactical changes, but they happen so frantically, so quickly, so often that I don't even know how we play. Maybe he labeled some players thinking that they can do these types of roles, but I think it takes a big man to say, hey, you know what, I messed up, I'm gonna need to switch it up in terms of player selection. And we could talk about someone like Watien, who can do these things, I feel like, but we haven't seen him really. But what do you think, Brian?
I think I think the crux of it is kind of what you mentioned. It's the frequency at which things have switched, because I understand that, like you mentioned, Eli, like tweaks here and there happen, there's changes of formation mid-game. But if you're going to be experimenting to this degree and consistently changing over and over and over, you're that lack of consistency is going to create a situation where it's kind of like what we saw in this game against Frankfurt. They don't have a clear idea of how to breach this Frankfurt defense. They don't have a clear idea of how to deal with that front two of Nalf and Ekitike. There's defensive discohesion, and there's no communication on the pitch between the players. You see Sahin shouting on the side of the pitch, but no one's reacting to it, because no one understands what's really being said. I feel like I don't think that having as many changes as we've had is conducive to success, and I think the point total that we have and the position we have in the table at this time kind of speaks to that.
Yeah, and if you look at our form since coming out of the winter break, when we've had more time in training to work on things, over the 3 matches coming into it, we were at about plus 0.1 something XG difference per 90. Since then, we're negative 1.7 across 3 matches, so a little under minus 0.6, which basically means uh, you're almost guaranteed to lose or draw every game. Um, like you have like a 20-25% chance of winning a game like that. Like that's not good. That's not Borussia Dortmund. And we've played two good sides, but we've also played Holstein Kiel, who, no disrespect to them, they were much better than us on the day. Like that's not an acceptable performance, like we've already talked about. But you know, Brian, Emre Can, our captain, is here to disrespect us, pull away a player from applauding the fans, and tell us, the players, we have solutions, of course. We just need to score one more goal than the opponent. Today, we switched to a back three, which I think was very, very good because Frankfurt often plays with two strikers and our defensive coverage was solid. But we're not winning games, and that's what makes a top team, which we are not right now. Uh, did Frankfurt play with two strikers? Or did they sell one of their two strikers coming into the game, which negated that whole change? Am I confused here?
Well, they played Nauf as a striker alongside Ekitike, so I mean, technically they did play with two strikers, but then again, Nauf is, as we know quite well from his Dortmund days, he's not a striker. He plays out wide and is a fullback at times. So, no, they weren't technically playing with two strikers, even though they tried to sell it as such. Regardless of the fact, two strikers, one strikers, three strikers, whatever. It doesn't matter. Point being, it kind of comes back to kind of like what we were saying. Like, there's no cohesion there. And the goals that Frankfurt scored weren't goals created by Frankfurt's brilliance. They were created by our own mistakes. And if you're going to come out and say, yes, we defended really well, and then you go back and look at those goals and you can still stand by that statement, then I don't know if I trust you playing for this team, let alone leading it out onto the pitch. So, and I've been saying this for weeks now. I mean, even going back to the Kiel game, when it was Nico Schlotterbeck that came out and was the first one to go to the fans, to talk to people, followed by Emre Can, right? There's clearly other people in this team that I think are better leaders. And I mean, my choice going into the season was Gregor Kobel, but if Nuri Sahin doesn't want a keeper, and I get it, you know, you want someone to talk to the ref and all that stuff. But if you're going to talk about someone who represents the club, and kind of it is able to vocalize things cohesively and actually say what's actually going on, I would put Schlotterbeck in that category. And I would think that, you know, he should be the one wearing the armband. All this, once again, kind of going back to his quote, if you're coming out as Dortmund's captain and saying that, and once again, you go back and you look at this performance and you can stand by that statement, that's very suspect to me.
Yeah, man, it was like, oh man, the line that bothers me is we just need to score one more goal than the opponent.
That's not even his job, and he's talking about it.
What are you talking about?
You know, that's the solution though. That's the solution to losing.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm missing something in translation, but this is the third consecutive match where we've conceded in the first half hour. Against Holstein Kiel, we took 28 minutes to concede. In this match, 18 minutes. Against Leverkusen, it was just one. So, you know, talking about defensive, like, coverage being good when you concede in the first half hour, essentially, like, in 3 straight games, basically says to me that, like, you're not fully understanding game state, you're having those defensive issues, but those defensive issues, are going away once the other team scores early, and then they're very comfortable defending against you. And so there was someone on a German Sky TV, I believe, who said, Dortmund are very easy to play against. You just give them the ball and they don't do anything. And this is 3 straight matches where we've had above our season average amount of possession, where we have conceded above our season average amount of XG, and we have accrued less than our season average amount of XG. So when Nuri Sahin has his team controlling the ball the amount he wants to, his team cannot control the ball into the areas it wants to, and that to me along with the regression and like the obvious mistakes tactically, are more than enough for me to send him packing if I was in charge. But I am not in charge. Sebastian Kehl is in charge, and he said we will continue in this constellation. Nuri has the confidence. We will not shy away from criticism, and we will continue to work on ourselves. This quote came out almost immediately after the game. What did you think when you saw this quote?
I felt like it showed I don't know how this is gonna come off, but like it's like they had no spine to say, "Hey, he messed up," or the team's not playing well, things of that nature. But they backed him for whatever reason, and I feel like if we're gonna progress, we need to call out our mistakes, and our shortcomings. And I understand that he's their friend, and he's obviously long history, academy, all that, but if he's not doing well, we need to be able to say something. And I don't know, it's like I need a bit more heat and fire and a bit more like passion throughout to want to make a change, because we can't keep this is the third straight game that we've lost this year. Like
We're
this
7 points behind Stuttgart right now, I believe it is.
Yeah.
Brian, when we didn't sack Terzic, can you remind me what the reasoning was? Was it like touching distance of Champions League or something like that?
Yeah, it was putting Champions League in danger, and that's exactly where we're at right now, right? And I mean, this is kind of what I was saying back when this was happening with Terzic. It's time to get somebody new. It's the same situation here with Sahin. And we talked about this in the group chat, and I've talked about this a little bit on social media as well. It's like, it comes like you have to back the manager and or the coach, I should say, and give them the time to be able to implement something. But there's two key things missing here. One of them is kind of what we already talked about, which is the constant switching up of formations and experimentation. There is no cohesive identity, no idea, no agenda of how we're going to be playing. So you already don't have that. And the results on top of that are just not coming at this point. So it's become something that's, you just can't sustain it. It's not sustainable. And we're really putting a lot of pressure on this club going into, the following season, financially, without being in Champions League. That's a big financial hit. That's something that'll, come down to who we can retain next season, who we can bring in. And that in itself will obviously have rippling effects on how we compete next season. But when it comes to, I guess, them being so keen on keeping Sahin at this point, I think what I'm starting to think, at least, is they're not convinced of anyone that they can get right now fully, which I fully understand that, especially if they're looking just within that German-speaking cohort. There isn't, at least in my opinion, someone who's available that's super, super convincing that I can see building a longer-term project. But on the flip side of that, you stay with Sahin, you're really risking a lot. You can't think that, just like we stayed with Terzic last season, that, we'll go on this like amazing run in the Champions League and this, that, and the third. There's no fifth place this time to save us, if I understand correctly. So it's not like we can even have that underwhelming finish and still get Champions League football next season. So all the safeguards that you kind of had with Terzic are gone. So you're banking a lot on this. And this is kind of where, my criticism kind of just goes past Sahin as well, because it's like, yes, Sahin clearly wasn't ready for this. And we talked about this in our fan club group chat as well. It's like, yes, they're like, clearly he's not ready, but there's people that allowed this decision to go through, that looked at him and said, you know what? Yes, you can do this. And that sucks for him too, if you really think about it, because he's now been plunged into this. He's in a really crappy situation, or the situation he wanted. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, like it kind of just goes to show that there's these top bottom decisions that have led us to this situation, and you could have seen it from like a mile away if you really, really looked into it. I mean, I will say at first I was very much hoping that Sahin would do well, these promises that he had of free-flowing attacking football sold it to me. Sold it to me. Because under Terzic, I'm very open in saying I wasn't a fan of the football. But we're basically playing a similar style, with all these long balls and all this stuff, and it's just less effective. So what are we really doing?
Yeah, it's essentially the same style. And like when you're talking about coming out of the international break and like they kept Terzic, Terzic went on a 3-match win streak coming out of the winter break last year. The year before it was like what, 5 or 6. Last year he won 4 out of 5, unbeaten for 7, and Nuri Sahin has lost 3 matches very convincingly. He's not dominating like the Champions League group of death. He's like winning exactly the games that you would on paper expect him to in the Champions League. And again, it goes to show that when they kept Terzic, they got away with it by luck rather than skill with that 5th Champions League place. This year, thanks to Leipzig, 0 points or whatever they have, and Stuttgart's Champions League struggles, the 5th spot for the Champions League will not be in the Bundesliga. It's almost certainly going to be in England and Spain, I think, or England and Italy. Like those are the 3, assuming Portugal doesn't have some crazy knockout runs from multiple sides. But that's essentially done. So you're looking at top 4. That's 7 points away, and that was the stick for Terzic last year. That was the stick that was released when Sahin had some early struggles, but it no longer is the stick. And you're seeing some wild speculation come out today that Kale and Vatska are the biggest Sahin defenders, and Sammer and Sven Mislintat want Sahin out. Now, I think there's a separate issue that's essentially like, do you trust the board to hire someone competent, someone good, or is Sahin also not good? Because I've seen a lot of people defending Sahin, and I'm like, I understand he was a club legend, but I think it's very clear that like the board that you're saying is the problem hired a coach who is currently a problem. But what do you guys think? Kale and Vatska, team Sahin in, Sammer and Mislintat, team Sahin out. What do you think of another year, another salacious of rumors of infighting in the Dortmund camp?
I don't know. I don't know what to believe when it comes to that. I don't know who would actually be leaking all these things.
Sven
sure
did it in the summer, so.
Well, then maybe he's doing it now. I don't know.
I think they all are.
Regardless, I mean, it's clearly not helpful. It clearly, if it is to be believed, if we're going on that assumption, it clearly shows division amongst the people that should be making the decisions right now. And that's not conducive to a successful environment. So basically, you have different factions basically pulling from different sides with their own ideas instead of standing as a club united to make the best decision as for the club that they can. And that's really sad to me, especially considering we talk about how all these people have like, a core link to this club. Like they're part of the culture, the DNA. You would think that they'd be able to put certain things aside and just objectively be able to look and be like, look, at this point, this is not sustainable for the club. We need to make a decision that's best for the club, not for our own egos. So my hope would be that it's just rumors and all that stuff. But if it is true, then that's just really sad because you've worked so hard to put all these people in place that are supposedly supposed to understand the club and just genuinely care about it, which is the main, plus of having these people in position, aside from their experience, and kind of throwing all that out the window and being like, no, but I put Sahin in this position and I don't want to look stupid, so we're going to keep him in. Or, no, I don't think I think I have a better decision or I have a better idea of which way this club is supposed to go than all these people, instead of just sitting down and just genuinely looking at it objectively. That's my main concern when it comes from when looking at all this.
Well said. I think like I'm on the same wavelength there. Um, it should be like an objective point of view at this point. Obviously, it would have been nice had it worked out, club legend, all these things, but um, it's gone past sentiment and like friendship because now it's it's like you guys said, now we have Champions League in jeopardy. I don't know how we're gonna perform in the Champions League this season. Um, and it's just worrying times, and I feel like a change is needed. How long they're gonna take to make this change, that's a whole other topic. But I really hope they don't take that long because like it's not looking good. It's really not looking good. Like it's very difficult to watch the games, especially that last one. Oh my goodness, it was very tough. Eli.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like my issue with it essentially is that this again is a Vatska problem because Vatska should have a sporting director, Sebastian Kale, who is dealing with the hiring and firing of the coach, and that should be his job. And if Kale chose Shaheen, then he should have to be the one to kind of suffer the consequences of that. He just got a contract extension. A lot of the transfers we've had to wildly speculate, like who's picking from the pool of targets, and I think that maybe like Palawa was a guy with a bit more imagination who was the chief scout that got released as his contract was ending this summer. So maybe a lot of the positives I'm starting to think were a little bit more with him rather than with Kale. And you have guys that are essentially not admitting a mistake. And then in the transfer window, based on the way the rumors are coming out, it feels like they're very tunnel visioned on certain guys. And to me, it's it's just a real issue. And like hiring former players is cool, but you have to hire the right former players. You have to hire the right egos essentially because what this is guys with massive egos. These are like footballers are known for having massive egos, and Kale is clearly putting his ego like I can't be wrong. I picked this coach, and it's his friend. You have Matthias Sammer, who is very known for his big ego whenever he speaks and he talks about mentality and all that. And he thinks that his mentality is the best and he knows all. And then you have Sven Mislintat, who has used his ego to get himself kicked out of multiple clubs, from Ajax to Arsenal. So you have a lot of egos that are clashing, that are not working together, and that is an issue of hiring former players potentially, but it's more an issue of how their roles are defined and who's performing what role. Because the way it should work is Sebastian Kale needs to take ownership that and say he believes in Shaheen and that's what he's doing, and everyone else needs to be like, listen, Shaheen's job. That's Kale's decision, and we support Kale and Shaheen. Blah blah blah. Um, that's not happening. People need to stay in their lane, and like because people have not been staying in their lane and they've been doing a bit of everything, I think that's causing a bit of a stir. But let's get into some of the possible alternatives. Reports have linked us to Roger Schmidt, Eric Ten Hag, Niko Kovac, Sandro Wagner, Sebastian Hoeneß in the summer as an option with a £7 to £8 million release clause. I believe I've seen Urs Fischer linked as well, the former Union Berlin boss. Can you pick a favorite and least favorite candidate for me? Start with Ali.
Least favorite is Eric Ten Hag. Um, I don't really particularly like his approach. It's a little too um, authoritarian, and I'm not really a fan of his personality either. And then favorite, I think I previously said I kind of like the idea of Sandro Wagner. I don't know if he's going to be available or would even want it, but um, I kind of, for whatever reason, I kind of like him. And yeah, Brian, what do you think?
So I'm on the same page with you there about Ten Hag. I mean, if it wasn't for his ideas on which players are fit to play after being embroiled in scandal, enough said there. Aside, if it was just his tactics, then I'd be like, yeah, sure, let's give him a go. But like, or just his like ability to coach, I would say. Then yeah, I give him a go. But I'm sorry, like I just don't agree with, I guess, his moral take on things. But that's neither here nor there at this point. Just looking objectively at things, I just yeah, I just don't think he'd be a good fit in that sense. I don't really have a favorite from this list other than Jonas, which is obviously not someone we can really get right now. That's, you get a caretaker and then hope for the best for the summer that, no one else comes in for him, which is unlikely. And depending where we end up, yes, we do have, history and a bigger budget than Stuttgart. But I do think that there are clubs out there that are in less turmoil that might be more conducive to convincing him to work on their project if they were to express their interest at this point in time. So I guess the one coach from this list, I guess that kind of, if we're looking to take experience and everything else into account, uh, and I say this, take this with a grain of salt because, like I said, I don't have a favorite aside from Jonas. I'd probably go with Kovac, just because he had success with Frankfurt. He's already been at a big club at like Bayern. He has that experience with a bigger club and has won things with them. It obviously wasn't the perfect, match made in heaven because he had his struggles there. But if I had to like pick just from this list, and I can't pick Jonas because it's unrealistic at this point in time, unless, like I said, we go with a caretaker and go to the summer, I'd go with Kovac at this point.
Yeah, so I agree with everything Brian said regarding Eric Ten Hag. I like Niko Kovac. I like Sandra Wagner. I do disagree with Brian a little bit on Sebastian Hoeneß because I think that his Champions League struggles are really going to turn off all the Premier League clubs and the big clubs in Spain. And I think that unless Marco Rosa gets sacked at the end of the summer, there's not a better job in Germany to take than Borussia Dortmund because I think Company is very likely to stay on at Bayern. And I think uh, if any big club comes in for a manager this summer, it's going to be Xabi Alonso. And if Xabi Alonso goes, and I'm Sabonis, I'm not looking at Leverkusen necessarily and thinking I can do a better job than Xabi Alonso. Whereas if I'm Sabonis, I'm thinking I'd have more money and I can definitely do a better job than Nuri Sahin. So I think there is something
Fair
there.
point.
Like we also finished 3 spots below Stuttgart and had the pull for Garassi and Anton. Part of that is wages, obviously, but that will also show something to a manager. Like at a club like Leverkusen, they've been incrementally increasing their wages and getting all these extensions done, and they've done a great job with that. But if you look at their additions this summer, coming off the back of the new Champions League money, it's Martin Terrier, it's um Alex. Oh my God, I'm thinking of a different Barcelona player, ex-Barcelona academy player's name. In Alex Garrido, I know their Spanish midfielder is someone different, but Alex, we'll go with that. Like these are the guys they signed. They're 26, 27, and they're very good players, but they don't have like that upside. They don't have the ceiling, and they have a lot of players that are kind of like that. So if I look at the squad for this year, um, obviously it's excellent. They're gonna contend with Bayern for the league. But if I'm looking as a manager to come in for 2 to 3 years, I'm looking at Hoffman being pretty old, Xhaka pretty old, the two guys I just mentioned being fine, and a lot of their younger players potentially leaving, like a Florian Wirtz, is not going to stay there forever, it seems. So I do think that Dortmund has a little bit more staying power where we saw a guy in his prime years with significant interest, signing a contract extension in Gregor Kobel. Obviously, he has his own issues, but I do think Dortmund has the pull to get Honus, and I do think that at a certain point it'd be worth it. My biggest issue that we didn't mention with some of these guys, specifically Eric Ten Hag or Roger Schmidt, is these guys have a bit more to their name, and they're going to command a bit more in wages. So Eric Ten Hag in particular, like he's not going to ask for the 10 million or whatever euros he was on at Manchester United. But if you're looking at a guy, when the average length of a football manager is like 1.3 years, you're looking at having to pay off like 1.7 years of a contract. That's going to be about like 8 million with Eric Ten Hag if you have to fire him after 1.3 years, depending on how long the contract is for. So I just think that that's a separate issue. And I think taking the risk on Sandro Wagner or Niko Kovac, I think it's going to be a lot better. But again, I think like we have internal options where you have a second team manager and a U19 manager with senior team interest in them. I think like doing that, and then in the summer you go get Seb Honus, and you can probably get Europa League football fairly comfortably with like one of those guys. I don't think that's my ideal choice, but I think if you can't get Niko Kovac or Sandro Wagner, I think that's what I do. Because I don't think Roger Schmidt is going to be a 3-year manager, and I think Eric Ten Hag morally and tactically is not there. Urs Fischer, I don't even want to talk about this because he's such a defensive manager. Like, it does not fit the squad at all. Like, we have so many guys that are like under 5'9". I'm not sure that guy has ever played a guy who's that small. Like, if you look at his Union Berlin sides, everyone's pretty big, and everyone has to win their physical battles, and they're playing very dull football that does not fit. Like, he's a very good manager at kind of like Sean Dyche football or like that defensive tactic. It's not necessarily going to work when you come in and have to dominate games, because the way teams play against Borussia Dortmund is very different from the way teams play against Union Berlin. But let's get into a happier segment and start off with our stars of the week. So, Brian, do you want to start us off with your star of the week?
Yeah, sure. And I mean, this is purely based on, I mean, clearly no one really had a fantastic week, right? But my choice is a player that we know always puts in a shift, even if he isn't playing his best or the team isn't playing his best. He's still out there trying. Against Kiel, he was the player that really tried to hold together that, makeshift defense, and that's Julian Ryerson. He's been trying to do everything, honestly, and he's been all over the pitch. He's played roles that necessarily doesn't fit. He has complained about it, and he tried to do Julian Brandt's job for him on the pitch against Frankfurt. So, I mean, yeah, what else is there to say? Shout out Ryerson. I will just put a little caveat in there and say I also would put Yen Kuto in there specifically for the Frankfurt game, just because when he came on, that was that creative spark that gave me a little bit of hope that, maybe, we'll get something out of this, even though in my opinion, a singular point was not enough. He came on, he showed hustle as well. He's only been here for half a season. He showed more heart than some of the people that have been here for years. So big up him too. So yeah,
he's my star of the week, Koto, because he's
there we go.
Yeah,
Brian goes first, picks two.
Yeah, classic. No, he hasn't had the confidence of the coaching staff to be played on a consistent basis. Sure, we can say he's not great in this area, not great in that area, but every time he is subbed on, he is giving everything he can, which obviously, right, we love to see. And the ball was going to him so much more than I saw Brandt showing for it. So I was a big fan of Jan Koto on the day. It seemed like everyone just wanted to get him the ball because you felt like something could be created, and he did create some things. So yeah, for me, it's Jan Koto.
Great shout. That would have been mine if I had deigned to give it to a senior player. But I'm giving it to a disrespected player from our youth team who's now moved up into professional football, and that's Kale Watson. Nuri Sahin said that this guy was a bit like himself, and said that this guy had a role to play with the first team, and we've not seen it. And to me, that is absolutely atrocious. We saw this guy for 180 minutes last year, I think it was, and he was great. There's absolutely no reason he can't get game time against Holstein Kiel or when our midfield is this bad, because playing guys that don't fit well into the system is not working. So why not try a guy who's at the club and has performed well in every opportunity he's been given? And you know what? He also scored this weekend. So first professional goal for Kiel Watson. Good for him. My star of the week, my dud of the week, Nuri Sahin. I don't need to say anything else about it. Brian, you're going to have to wait because otherwise you're going to take 5 different guys. So Ali, who is your dud of the week?
My dud is gonna be Bensabaini. There's obviously a couple of guys that we could pick, but Bensabaini, at the start of this, I was talking about intensity, pardon me, and he showed none of it. That goal, he was super slow to read the game. He was jogging back before he realized how much danger they were in, and he was subbed at half for a reason. For me, really let me down. He's put in some good performances, but this past month has not been it for him.
I was actually only going to pick one this time, and Bensabaini wasn't it. So, no, this one is very clear for me, and it's going to be Julian Brandt. It's been a rough one for him this season. And my main issue. Okay, let me backtrack. Julian Brandt in form is a player I really love to see. A Julian Brandt that we're seeing right now that is doing all the things that he was criticized for in seasons past, with being dispossessed constantly, being sloppy on the ball. And now he doesn't even have that creative spark, right? He's not putting in the passes that we loved him for. He's not being that moody creator. He's just being moody. I compared his, his I guess threat level over the weekend to that of a wet paper towel, and that's exactly what he reminded me of. I'm not trying to be disrespectful in saying that, but I just didn't see anything from him.
Feels a little disrespectful.
You know what? But it's okay. It's all right.
The performance level is very low, but I wouldn't say wet paper towel is egregious.
He had the threat level of a wet paper towel, which is zilch. And
I didn't elaborate on my dud of the week, but one of the reasons that my dud of the week was Nuri Sahin is because we've seen Gio Reyna outperform Julian Brandt for the last 5 or 6 weeks,
right,
if you want to put it out that way, since his first start against Barcelona. And why is Julian Brandt still in the lineup when he's not performing? Because that sends a terrible message to every single player. And we didn't even get into that part of why Nuri Sahin is bad and how he keeps starting the same guys and not using his depth. But, that's neither here nor there.
But he wanted a small squad.
So just to kind of finish my point there, you're talking about a player that, despite his moodiness and despite, him losing the ball as much as he does and whatever, there was that creative aspect that we loved, and that seems to have disappeared. And now you're kind of just looking at a player that functionally just doesn't have a function, or is unable to find his function in the system. And kind of what you guys have already mentioned, that's partly Shaheen's fault. But the basics are the basics, and if you're not going to do the basics, you shouldn't be on the pitch. So,
yeah, that's very fair to say. I don't know how much more we want to talk about Brandt, so let's quickly run through some transfers. So Dortmund apparently getting Rashford Thursday morning. He's going to show up, take his medical, but now it seems he's waiting on Barcelona and has agreed terms with them. Brian, I think you're pretty happy about this. Ali has mixed feelings because I think he wanted neither of his clubs to sign Rashford.
Yeah, why?
I'm so happy.
Why? I don't
So happy.
like. I don't get it.
You
I
guys
don't-
are doing us such a service.
You
God
guys.
bless
Hey,
Barcelona.
I'm still on your team here.
I'm
but-
sorry. Who was the one with the Barcelona background when we were playing each other? Pause. Pause.
Hey, I don't remember that. But listen, Rashford had potential once upon a time, and he has lost all seems like motivation to want to perform at that level. So I don't really want him in a black and yellow kit or a blaugrana kit because like there's a big risk whether it's a loan or not. That's wages, that's space. And I saw a tweet saying that Ferran Torres might go on loan to AC Milan. I'm like, no, I don't really like the guy, but I'm like, no, I'd rather have him over Rashford because I don't see it, because we brought in Aubameyang and I was kind of iffy at Barca and I was like, you know what, that was amazing. I don't see the same thing happening here at either club. I just think that he doesn't care anymore.
So my thing with Rashford is
I don't know if it's not
you know,
care. He has a back injury that I think has hampered him. He's also getting up to the age where, like, for a dribbly attacker, you do kind of fall off a little bit.
So my thing with Rashford is, and because I feel like Dortmund has been able to do this and rehabilitate some players for United, like the one we did last season, I think we'd be able to get a tune out of him. But once again, there's a few problems here, right? You're looking at a player that is a similar profile to a player that we just let go in the form of Daniel Malen. If we're using him in a similar position, it's going to be the same story and the same scenario, so you're not going to get that upside. But even in the hypothetical that you do, for example, you see him playing in our front two next to Guirassy, Bayer isn't getting minutes. You're building up a player for another club that you're not going to sign because, let's be honest, we're not going to sign him for £385,000 a week. That's not happening. Dude's not going to take that sort of pay cut. I'm sorry. Once again, it's not happening. You're paying $8 to $10 million for a loan, or euros, excuse me, for that loan for those 6 months instead of investing in a player for like 15, 20 that you'll have for years and probably sell on, or that will lead you to some sort of silverware or better position in the table long term, simply to build up this player that at the end of the day is a impermanent solution and an imperfect solution. So at the end of the day, it's nonsensical. It's not worth the risk. There is very little upside to it. So I'm very happy that Barcelona is doing us the gracious thing and rehabilitating United.
Yeah, Maxi Bayer, like, they play on the opposite side, but Maxi Bayer is much better than Marcus Rashford at this point in their
100%.
careers.
100%.
At least that's what he's shown over the last 2 years compared to Rashford. And you know what? We're already paying one. They play on opposite sides, but I don't think that really matters because, like, is Rashford going to then go and displace Jamie Gittins on the left wing?
Exactly.
Like, what are we talking about?
No,
Why
it
is
doesn't
I don't
make
get
sense.
it. I don't get it. Like we need depth,
I mean-
right? Like, but this is not the guy to
Yeah.
bring in.
Yeah, and if we're going to bring on a guy for 20 minutes, I don't know why we pay $9 million when we can just pay Cole Campbell a couple €100,000 a year to come in
and
and
develop
play.
one of our own.
There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. The next link, Dortmund monitoring Bakayoko, and as a Malen replacement. I don't even know why we're looking so hard at an attacker, but it's...
We need midfield, man. We need midfield. Like at the
We
start of the
just signed
season.
one in the summer, come on.
Yeah, buddy. We like the thing is, the style that he wants to play, he does not have the profile for, right? He doesn't have, if we go back to our history, a player like himself, a player like Gundogan, a player like I think the last person that we had that was kind of, a distributor, was Mahmoud Dahoud, right? And you could
Witsel?
say,
Witsel. Yeah.
oh, Witzel too, sure, exactly, right? But even then, that was so long ago. I like if we're gonna bring.
Chaloupe, little boat.
Well, hey man, this is the first
boat.
time I hear of it. But like we need at the start of the season, I was crying out for wingers, but seeing how he wants to play, he does not have the midfielders for it. So I think in terms of offense, attacking, we're fine with the players we have. we don't have anybody to distribute the ball, to pick out the spaces, in between the opposing lines. Brandt is looking very demotivated at the minute. Sabitzer is kind of being run into the ground. To be quite honest, he's playing like 4 different positions in one game. I just don't get it. But yeah, Bakayoko though.
I mean, personally, I like Bakayoko. I think
Sure.
that would be a good signing, but like kind of like what you guys are saying, there are obviously other needs. And just putting this out there, a player that I've backed for years now, Maxence Kakere. Como's looking into him. That's crazy.
Already signed.
Oh,
16
is he already
mil.
signed? Wow.
16 mil. 16 mil. That's less than 25, which we sold Mullen for. I'm gonna lose it.
Just
Oh,
making my day,
man.
Eli. Thank you.
Brian, you know what? I'm gonna do some quick math here. So Celtic have canceled the loan of Valle, who I said we should sign in our how to fix. He's rumored to be available, 7 million. Como also interested. I don't know why. Beautiful place, but I don't know if you're choosing Como over storied club Champions
Maybe
League
he's a
football.
Star Wars fan.
Maybe. And then you add Kakare to that. That's 23 mil, and Valle can't be on much because he's on a youth contract essentially with Barcelona. So not really considerable wages there, and Kakare's on League One wages, although they're a bit inflated, and that's why they're massively in debt. But I think you're about even on wages there with Mullen. So right there, I just fixed our midfield and gave us backup left back for 23 million, which is less than we sold Mullen for. But I'm just on a podcast. I'm not a sporting
I'm just
director.
so sad to hear that this has already happened.
Yeah,
God.
crazy.
How they're pulling players like this, I mean, I don't
Oh,
get it. But...
Insane. Where's this money coming
Como
from?
is known for housing some reclusive millionaires and billionaires. So
Fair.
they had a massive takeover, faced by Cesc Fabregas, who's also managing the club, and some other famous people. So I guess they have so much money. They've done so much business already. Signing us on a Diao, who I really liked. Also, as a Mullen replacement, get a 19-year-old that's scored
great.
against. Was it Barcelona recently?
Yeah, it was a back heel, I think. So good.
Yeah. He's already scored in Italy as well. But moving on to our next rumor, I think this is one we all absolutely hate, despise. I don't think Watson even wants it because he's such a big Dortmund fan. But he has been linked with Bochum on loan or a permanent, even though they have 2 midfielders they're pretty happy with at current. So what do you guys think on this? It makes me want to throw up.
What do you think we think?
This is
It
stupid.
makes me want to throw up. I don't think you're that far off.
It's so unnecessary.
I would venture to say I already threw up regarding this, but I dig. But no, it's ridiculous.
Is that why you were late?
Yeah, it's exactly why. I was crying at my picture of Watson in the corner of my room. I have like a little shrine. No, but jokes aside, like this is moronic. Like another player that clearly shows promise, that clearly shows that they want to be part of this club, to get shipped out to basically a derby rival. Make it make sense.
Not basically a derby rival. I was
Directly.
there. Do you want it? You should have heard the whistles anytime Felix Pastelak breathed on the pitch when I was there. Oh my god,
I feel you.
If I knew how to whistle, I would have been doing it.
I feel you, but it is a derby, and I'll change that statement for sure. But it's obviously not the same as Schalke. But regardless, like still a derby, like a derby rival, like make it make sense. Like this is a promising player that, as you mentioned, Eli, should be getting minutes because our midfield is not functioning. What are we doing? Why? What's the point?
Yeah, he's shown me more in his 6-minute cameos playing every single midfield role this season than a certain Marcel Sabitzer, Julian Brandt, since the first 10 games has shown me. Like, this guy deserves to be playing. There's absolutely no reason. And if you're getting rid of him now, you're essentially selling low on a value guy that should be high, and literally a culture guy. Like, if he's on the pitch, he's not going to be jogging back. He's not going to be walking back as we can see the second goal at the death against
He's gonna
Frankfurt.
be hauling ass.
Like,
What is he
do
doing?
you want me to name names? Because I'll name names. I'll name
Please
names
do.
right now.
Please do.
Ben Sbaini, Gio Reyna, like. I
That's
forget
two.
the other two.
That's two.
I'm sorry. There were two others. Emre Can, I think, was one. No, was he off the pitch by then? Anton, I don't think, was super running back, but he wasn't in a better position. The better
Emre Can was
position
still
would have
on the
been
pitch.
Gio Reyna and Ben Sbaini were the biggest culprits there. Anyway, moving on. Gio Reyna should have started, though, to be fair. And
I was gonna say, like,
whatever.
it in that game, I feel like, we could have used Gio Reyna a bit earlier, someone who'd actually want to get forward.
If he's not starting tomorrow, like, this will already have been released. We're talking about the Bologna game. That episode will be live Thursday morning, Eastern Standard Time. So we're going to talk about that then. But if he's not starting that game, just know I will have like a little rage.
Just the one point about Reyna there. If we're talking about like all the issues we had moving the ball through the middle of the pitch, the one thing that I've always said about Reyna is that he's good at finding that incisive pass. So if you're seeing that that's the issue, why are you waiting so long to introduce him? Especially when you know he's the player that can do that.
Mm-hmm.
So just another,
Fully agree. Yeah.
I don't know. Just
You know,
another thing.
Kiel Watyen in the third division was dribbling through the park on a pretty good regular basis in his last game. So
He should play
putting
them
that
both.
out there too.
He should play them both.
I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
Like, if we're gonna lose every game, which under shocking we are, like, might as well play Watyen and Reyna every game.
Yeah.
Because worst comes to worst, you find out if you want to keep or sell Reyna.
Mhm.
You find out if you want to keep or allow Watyen to develop elsewhere if he's not going to be good enough. And instead, we're just trotting out guys that are pushing 30, over 30, that are not helping us win today. Why were they signed at 33 if they're not going to help us win today? Why were they signed at 28 if they're not going to win? I don't know. Anyway, last transfer rumor to get to before I get an aneurysm is Renato Viega negotiating with Chelsea for absolutely everyone this window has been terrible. They just recalled Trevo Chalobah and are trying to sell him back to Palace for 40 million while trying to sign Palace's center back for 65 million. Chelsea also signed from their U23 side. No disrespect to the Strasbourg fans, you guys don't deserve to be Chelsea U23s, but they just signed Strasbourg's center back.
They're trying to sell him back already?
Trevo Chalobah, yeah, they recalled him and are trying to sell him back
immediately. Yeah.
Like immediately. Like, they literally they loaned him out. They paid the penalty to recall him and are trying to blackmail Palace into selling a different center back and offering Trevo Chalobah in return, who they
What world
also,
are we
despite
living in?
coming through their academy, like, oh my god, this is why I will never get on a player for trying to leave a club and doing whatever it takes, because Trevo Chalobah has been at that club for like a decade. He got banished in preseason. He gets loaned to Palace, and they now recalled him, and he will not play for Chelsea because they don't want to risk, because if they need to sell him or loan him to not Crystal Palace, they can't play him. So he's not going to play until he either gets sold, loaned, back to Palace or elsewhere. Like, they are messing with this guy's career to try and force themselves to be able to sign a player. It's
But
so
Renato
bad.
Vega.
Yeah. So Chelsea's being absolutely unreasonable. They're asking for a £6 million loan fee, rumored. He's not worth what we're offering at 2 to 3 million on a loan fee. This is a guy they signed for 15 million and aren't playing. So absolutely ridiculous. This is what I alluded to earlier when I said we were tunnel vision on certain guys. Like, if Chelsea's being unreasonable, they don't want to allow us to pay market rate, go elsewhere.
Big time.
And this is such a criticism of the club. Like, this is so moronic to get bogged down in this. Like, we've seen different center backs already move for reasonable fees this window. We know we have money because we just sold Mullen. Like, go and find someone cheap. Like, just find someone.
Mm-hmm.
So my
Like,
thing
it's
with
not that hard.
my thing with Vega is, and I've spoken to friends of mine that are Chelsea fans. They said he has played a few games and he's looked decent in them, so that's a separate issue. But the main thing is obviously he hasn't played too much to obviously warrant any sort of exuberant fee. Obviously very very versatile player, can play defensive mid, can play fullback, center back, all this stuff. My one confusion with it, and this is something that I've kind of been stuck on, is the guy wants to play center back, and I assume we will be playing him at center back, but there's also the expectation that he will fill in at fullback, because that's also a position of need. So once again, we're getting a player that's coming in to expecting to play mainly as center back, which I think the main pairing will be Anton and Schlotterbeck moving forward. So he's not going to get as many minutes in that position. He's going to probably get more minutes at fullback. So my kind of thinking on this is like you're bringing this player in with different expectations from what the reality is. How's that going to work out, and how's that going to affect his performances? So yes, I get the versatility is good, but I would just hope that player and club are on the same page as to exactly what he's being brought in to do. So if we do bring him in, I hope that's just clarified, because that to me is a little skeevy and weird in itself.
Mm-hmm. There's a left back, and so sorry, Eli, you can go ahead.
I'm sure he's aware of like what the club has planned for him.
I was gonna say there's a left back at Villarreal. His name is Sergi Cardona. Very, very good. What does
I've
that
heard
look?
about him.
Yeah,
I've written about him.
He's nice, and he's not that expensive.
I thought Sergi Cardona was a right back, or am I confusing him with a different player? The player who just moved there on a free last summer, from Las Palmas.
That's Cardona. He's a left back.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
I recommended him. We're talking about all my how to fix left backs last year because they are excellent. I'm great at finding people on FBref. But the issue with him is he just moved in a free this past summer, so
okay.
I think he'd be a little too expensive.
Gotcha. But yeah, he's really good.
But yeah, great player. Great player. Could have signed him on a free, but
Yeah.
why bother? Why bother? We already have one left back. Why do you need two? It's not like guys get suspended. They don't get injured.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
No.
Especially not at Dortmund. Come on.
Impossible.
Absolutely not.
Peak physical condition.
You know what? Before we wrap up, let's have a quick Bundesliga fantasy update. Despite a terrible, horrible, no good week, Edward retains his top spot. And then we have Pints of Bayer, Ryu Sinugi, the SA Germans in 4th, FC Clever Football Puns in 5th, Brestov 09 in 6th. Oh, and that's me in 7th. As I finished 2nd this week for the Dortmund Dispatch League. So I do know ball. And is there anything you two guys want to plug before we head out?
Yeah, Pints of Bayer. I love that name. No reason why. Obviously, not that I have specific bias or anything. Yeah, you can catch me on Twitter and Blue Sky as well. But just listen to our pod wherever you listen to podcasts. Main thing to plug here at this point in time. Yeah, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everywhere you listen to your podcasts. So yeah, listen to us there.
I'm on the same wave. Dortmund Dispatch everywhere. Check us out on YouTube, Blue Sky, Twitter. And if you want to follow me, you can. I'm just complaining about both teams, Barca and Dortmund, at VZN Sports. But check out the channels of the podcast, and we'll see you guys really soon.
Yeah, we will be uploading a Bologna match reaction on Thursday, so stay tuned for that.
Jadon Sancho to score. No mistakes this time.
That is a rocket.
Royce out. Another fantastic goal by Marco Royce. Haaland's volley is beautiful beyond
Jetzt
compare.
kommt das Wunder von Dortmund. Foulspiel von Inso an Götze.
Needs to lay it off. We're going to shot away. Oh, what a goal!